A homeless veteran helped a stunning woman with a broken-down car, unaware of who she really was. But what happened that rainy night would change both their lives forever. Marcus Thompson watched the raindrops slide down the cracked window of the abandoned shelter he'd been sleeping in for the past 3 years, ever since he came back from Afghanistan with a shattered leg and an even more wounded soul. The streets of Detroit were merciless to veterans like him, but nothing had prepared him for the encounter that was about to happen. The sound of a sputtering engine echoed down the deserted avenue, slicing through the silence of the early morning like a cry for help. Something in his military instincts, never fully gone, prompted Marcus to grab his crutch and head out to investigate. The torrential rain had turned the streets into dark rivers, and there, under the weak flicker of a streetlight, stood a luxurious black BMW with steam rising from its hood. A stylish woman paced nervously around the vehicle, her high heels clicking against the wet asphalt as she spoke frantically on the phone. Marcus could tell, even from a distance, that she didn't belong in that dangerous neighborhood, where drug dealers and thieves ruled the corners after dark. His soldier's instincts raised a silent alarm. A wealthy woman, alone in a place like that, was a perfect target. But there was something else in her rushed movements, something more than just fear of being mugged. Approaching slowly so as not to startle her, Marcus got a better look at the stranger. Perfectly styled blonde hair, even in the rain, a dress worth more than his entire year's veteran pension, and jewelry that glittered like stars against her pale skin. She abruptly ended her call and kicked the tire in frustration that seemed to carry far more weight than just a mechanical issue. When their eyes met, Marcus saw something he knew all too well, the look of someone running from something far worse than the rain. It was the same look he had when waking up from nightmares of bombs exploding in Kandahar. In that moment, without knowing why, Marcus decided he couldn't just walk past her. "Need some help, ma'am?" Marcus's rough voice cut through the noise of the rain, making the woman spin around suddenly, eyes wide with fright. She stepped back instinctively, her right hand moving into her designer bag as if searching for protection. Marcus raised his hands in peace, recognizing the fear in her eyes, the same fear he saw in the mirror when he remembered the battlefield. "I'm a veteran. I won't hurt you," he said, showing the faded military ID he always kept in his torn pocket. What neither of them knew was that this simple conversation under the rain was about to trigger a chain of events that would put both their lives in mortal danger. The mysterious woman hesitated for long seconds that felt like eternity, her blue eyes studying every detail of Marcus's weathered face, as if trying to decipher his true intentions. My car just died," she murmured, her soft voice a stark contrast to the hostile surroundings. But Marcus noticed a slight tremor that had nothing to do with the cold rain. He saw how she kept a safe distance, how her eyes constantly scanned the shadows of the street, as if expecting something terrible to emerge at any moment. It was the behavior of someone being hunted, and Marcus knew that feeling well after months dodging enemy snipers. "I can take a look at the engine if you want," he offered, limping toward the car as the rain intensified. "You know about cars?" she asked, genuine surprise coloring her voice as she watched Marcus open the hood with the precise movements of someone used to repairing equipment under pressure. The veteran's calloused hands moved with expertise between the engine components, completely ignoring the rain, soaking his faded military jacket. "Learned to fix everything from Humvees to tanks in the army," he replied, checking wires and connections with the focus of a surgeon. She stepped slightly closer, intrigued by the unexpected competence of a man society had clearly abandoned. For a moment, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years. The feeling of being useful, of having a purpose beyond simply surviving another day on the ruthless streets. The problem was worse than it looked. The alternator was completely fried, leaving the luxurious car as useless as an expensive sculpture. "You'll need a tow," Marcus said, closing the hood as rain dripped down his bearded face. "But this isn't the place to be waiting around, especially for someone like you." He saw the instant panic in her eyes, as if the idea of staying there even a minute longer was a death sentence. "I know a 24-hour gas station 3 blocks from here. There's a phone, and it's a safe place," Marcus offered, pointing in the opposite direction from where she had come. But when she looked that way, her eyes widened in pure terror, as if she had seen a ghost walking among the shadows of the night. "I can't go that way," she whispered, her voice laced with a fear so deep it triggered Marcus's protective instincts instantly. Something was very wrong, and his military experience told him they weren't alone on that street. There were eyes watching, predators waiting for the right moment to strike. "Then we'll take the long way," Marcus said, his voice shifting into the commanding tone he used with his soldiers when danger was near. He began walking in the opposite direction, hoping she would follow, but the screech of tires on wet asphalt echoed through the street. 2 dark cars emerged from the shadows, their headlights cutting through the rain like searchlights, and Marcus realized that whatever past this mysterious woman carried, he had just become part of something far more dangerous than he'd ever imagined. The homeless veteran, who had innocently offered help to a stranger, now found himself at the center of something that made his worst war nightmares seem like child's play. "Run!" the woman shouted, grabbing Marcus's arm with desperate strength as the 2 dark cars sped toward them, their engines roaring like predatory beasts in pursuit. Marcus felt the familiar surge of combat adrenaline flood his veins, his military instincts kicking in as he quickly analyzed their escape options. The alley to the left was too narrow for the cars, but his injured leg would make running a deadly challenge. "This way," he commanded, pulling her toward the maze of backstreets he knew like the back of his hand after 3 years surviving on them. The sound of slamming doors and heavy footsteps echoed behind them, confirming it wasn't just the cars they had to fear. The torrential rain became their unexpected ally, forming a natural curtain that blurred the pursuer's vision as Marcus led the woman through paths only the homeless knew. "Who are those men?" he asked between labored breaths, noticing how she ran with surprising agility for someone in high heels. "It's complicated," was all she managed to say, but Marcus saw in her eyes that complicated was a dangerously understated way of describing something far more sinister. They ducked behind a trash container as powerful flashlights swept through the shadows, and Marcus realized their pursuers were no ordinary criminals. They moved with military precision, communicated through hand signals. They were professionals. That meant the mysterious woman had gotten involved in something far more serious than car trouble. "Listen," Marcus whispered, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to making life-or-death decisions. "I know a place we can hide, but I need to know what we're up against." She stared at him through the rain, and for a moment Marcus saw past the scared, wealthy facade. There was a sharp intelligence there, a strength she was trying to suppress. "My name is Sarah," she finally said, "and those people, they want something I have." The desperate simplicity of her answer made Marcus realize he was dealing with someone used to keeping secrets, someone whose entire life was likely built around information others would kill to possess. The sound of footsteps getting closer forced them to move again, but Marcus already knew it didn't matter where they ran. This night was just beginning. Reaching the abandoned shelter Marcus called home, he quickly blocked the entrance with debris, while Sarah scanned the room with eyes that absorbed every detail. From the faded photos of his military unit on the wall to the painkillers organized like survival gear. "You live here?" she asked, her voice filled with genuine compassion that surprised Marcus after years of being treated as invisible by society. 3 years, he answered simply, checking to make sure all entry points were secured as the sound of cars circling the block echoed outside. But when Sarah approached the military photos and her eyes focused on a dusty Medal of Honor, Marcus saw something shift in her expression, as if she were recognizing something he himself had long forgotten. "Marcus Thompson, 82nd Airborne Division," she read aloud, and the way she said his name stirred something in his memory, something important that was about to change everything. The unexpected connection between the homeless veteran and the mysterious woman deepened as Sarah revealed she didn't just recognize his name. She knew his story of heroism, the one he had tried to forget. "You saved 17 soldiers when your base was attacked in Kandahar," she said softly, touching the medal with a reverence that made Marcus's heart race unexpectedly. "How do you know that?" he asked, his rough voice betraying the emotion he was trying to hide, because for years no one had mentioned his acts of valor. Society only saw the broken veteran, not the hero he once was. Sarah hesitated, her eyes revealing that there was much more to her identity than she was ready to admit. "Let's just say, I care about people who served our country," was her evasive reply, but Marcus could read between the lines. There was a much deeper story connecting their lives. The sound of heavy footsteps circling the building snapped them back to the dangerous reality of their situation, forcing them to whisper as they planned their next move. Marcus realized Sarah wasn't just a random victim. The way she analyzed escape routes, how she questioned strategic defense points, revealed a mind trained for crisis. "You're not just some ordinary person, are you?" he asked bluntly. The sad smile she gave him confirmed his growing suspicion. Outside, the crackle of radios signaled that their pursuers were coordinating a systematic search that would soon reach them. The night promised to be far longer and more dangerous than either of them had imagined when they first met on that rainy street. The truth about who Sarah really was began to reveal itself in fragments when she demonstrated knowledge no ordinary woman would have about survival and evasion tactics. "There are 3 exits from this building they don't know about," Marcus whispered, testing her, and was shocked when she immediately identified a 4th exit he had missed. A passage through the ventilation system that connected to the neighboring building. His trained veteran eyes instantly recognized that Sarah had military or intelligence training, yet she continued to dodge his direct questions with vague answers that only deepened the mystery. The sound of boots climbing the stairs forced them to act quickly, and Marcus realized that whoever she was, her life now depended on him keeping her safe. The irony wasn't lost on him. A man society had abandoned was now protecting someone clearly important enough to be hunted by professional operatives. Escaping through the route Sarah had suggested, they emerged in an abandoned warehouse 3 blocks away, where they finally had a moment to breathe and plan. "Marcus," Sarah said, her voice filled with an urgency that triggered his military instincts, "you need to understand this won't stop until I reach a specific location, and these people will do anything to stop me." The intensity in her eyes revealed this wasn't just about some common crime. It was something much bigger, something that could have ramifications far beyond their individual lives. Marcus felt the familiar weight of responsibility he had once carried as a squad leader in Afghanistan, the sense that the decisions made in the next few minutes could mean the difference between life and death. But this time, he didn't have a platoon of trained soldiers by his side, just a mysterious woman and his own survival instincts sharpened by the unforgiving streets of Detroit. The tension escalated rapidly when Marcus realized that their pursuers weren't just well organized. They had resources that suggested connections to powerful organizations operating beyond the law. "They're using military-grade tracking equipment," he muttered, as he watched through a cracked window how the men swept buildings systematically with thermal devices. Sarah moved closer to him, and for the first time since they met, Marcus saw genuine fear in her eyes. Not fear of being caught, but sheer terror at what might happen if she didn't reach her destination. "There's a place you need to be, isn't there?" he asked, connecting the dots between her desperate behavior and the relentless persistence of their pursuers. The way she nodded confirmed that they weren't just running from something, they were running towards something equally important and dangerous. The sound of helicopters hovering overhead made Marcus realize he had completely underestimated the scale of the situation he had entered when he helped a stranger with car trouble. "Whoever you are," he said, looking her straight in the eye, "normal people don't trigger operations on this scale. This feels like an international terrorist hunt." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them again, Marcus saw a steely determination, the kind he had only seen in his most experienced commanders during high-stakes missions in the Middle East. "Marcus," she whispered, her voice heavy with the kind of gravity that made the air between them feel denser. "If something happens to me tonight, promise you'll give this to someone trustworthy at the FBI." She pulled a small device from her bag. It looked like an ordinary flash drive, but Marcus knew that seemingly insignificant objects often contained data capable of toppling governments or saving thousands of lives. The moment of truth arrived when Sarah realized she could no longer hide her identity from Marcus, especially after he had risked his life to protect her from pursuers who clearly had unlimited resources. "Marcus, I need to tell you who I really am," she said, her voice trembling, not from fear, but from the magnitude of what she was about to reveal. "My full name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm the CEO of Mitchell Industries, and—" She hesitated, watching the growing recognition in his eyes. 3 hours ago, I escaped a kidnapping orchestrated by people who wanted to force me to hand over access codes to military contracts worth billions of dollars." The words hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. Sarah Mitchell was one of the richest and most powerful women in America, someone whose disappearance was likely already mobilizing federal agencies across the country. Suddenly, everything made sense. The professional pursuers, the military-grade resources, the desperate urgency. He hadn't been protecting a random victim, but someone whose life or death could affect national security. "You're the Sarah Mitchell," Marcus whispered, recalling the headlines he'd occasionally seen in discarded newspapers about the billionaire who had built a tech empire after inheriting her father's company. "The same one who supplies defense systems to the Pentagon, who holds contracts with NASA, who—" He stopped, realizing that one of the most important people in the country had spent the last few hours hiding in his broken-down homeless shelter. Sarah nodded solemnly, and in her eyes Marcus saw not only confirmation of her identity, but also the crushing weight of the responsibility it carried. If something happened to her, it wouldn't just be the loss of a single life, but potentially thousands of jobs, critical defense contracts, and state secrets falling into the wrong hands. The flash drive in his hand suddenly felt much heavier, as Marcus realized it likely contained information that entire governments would kill to possess. The revelation of Sarah's true identity completely shifted the dynamic between them, but it also raised the stakes to a level Marcus had never faced, not even in the most dangerous battlefields of Afghanistan. "The kidnappers haven't given up," Sarah explained urgently. "They know I've memorized the access codes, and the flash drive contains evidence that could destroy a corporate espionage network embedded in US military contracts." Marcus felt the familiar weight of responsibility pressing down on him, the duty to protect something greater than himself. But this time, it wasn't about soldiers under his command. It was about protecting someone whose decisions impacted the safety of millions of Americans. The sound of vehicles approaching once again forced them to move, but now Marcus knew they weren't just fleeing common criminals. They were up against traitors willing to sell US military secrets to the highest bidder. As they prepared to leave the abandoned warehouse, Sarah revealed more details that made Marcus realize the situation was even more complex than he had imagined. "There's a federal agent waiting for me at a secure location, but I have to get there with the flash drive intact," she explained, checking the device as if her life depended on it, and Marcus realized it probably did. If we don't make it by sunrise, they'll have enough time to vanish with billions in military tech and leave our country vulnerable. The magnitude of the responsibility that had landed on Marcus's shoulders was overwhelming, but it also awakened something he hadn't felt in years, a sense of purpose beyond just surviving another day on the streets. For the first time since returning from war, Marcus Thompson had a mission that truly mattered. And no matter how many enemies stood between them and safety, he would not fail. The final chase intensified as Marcus drew on long dormant combat skills to move through Detroit's streets like a soldier on a mission. His intimate knowledge of the alleys and hidden passages gave him a tactical edge over the pursuers, who had superior equipment but lacked terrain familiarity. "They're closing in from 3 directions," Sarah whispered, watching flashlight beams sweep methodically through the dark. But Marcus had already identified the one escape route his years of urban survival had taught him, the drainage tunnels running beneath the city. "Trust me," he said, guiding her to a sewer entrance that looked impossible to navigate, but which he knew led directly to the financial district where the federal agent was waiting. The sound of gunfire behind them confirmed that the pursuers had lost patience with the silent chase. They were now willing to use deadly force to retrieve both Sarah and the flash drive containing evidence of national betrayal. Emerging from the tunnels just 2 blocks from the safe meeting point, Marcus and Sarah suddenly came face to face with the leader of the kidnappers, a man in an expensive suit who clearly wasn't just a common criminal, but someone with deep ties to the shadows of corporate power. "Ms. Mitchell," he said with disturbingly calm composure, "this homeless veteran can't protect you from what's going to happen if you don't hand over the device voluntarily." Marcus felt the familiar cold calm of combat take over his nerves, his military instincts calculating distances, attack angles, and survival odds with machine-like precision. But when Sarah took his hand and whispered, "Thank you for showing me there are still heroes in this world," Marcus knew that no matter what happened in the next few minutes, he had found something he thought he'd lost forever, a reason to fight that was worth more than his own life. What happened next surprised even Marcus, who thought he'd seen it all during his years of combat in the Middle East. Sarah Mitchell activated an emergency device that summoned federal agents from 5 different directions, revealing that the entire night's chase had been monitored and that she had never truly been in mortal danger. The plan had always been to use the situation to catch the entire corporate spy network in the act. "Marcus," she said as the criminals were detained around them, "you weren't just a hero tonight. You were the unpredictable element that made this operation possible. Your genuine presence gave me the perfect cover to get them to reveal the full scope of their organization." The homeless veteran, who had started the night by helping a stranger with car trouble, discovered he had been instrumental in dismantling a conspiracy that threatened national security. But the greatest surprise was still to come. Sarah revealed she had researched him long before their random encounter. She knew his story of military heroism because she had secretly created a program to help abandoned veterans, and Marcus Thompson had been the first name on her list of those who deserved a second chance. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the executive office of Mitchell Industries, not as a visitor, but as the director of corporate security, a position Sarah had created specifically for him after witnessing firsthand his exceptional protective instincts and tactical analysis. "You saved my life twice," Sarah said during their first official meeting. "First, when you decided to help a stranger in trouble, and then when you used your soldier's instincts to keep me safe during the most dangerous operation the FBI has ever conducted in Detroit." Marcus looked out the 30th floor window, down at the same streets where he had once slept in the cold, now from a completely different perspective, not just as someone who had survived abandonment, but as someone who had discovered that sometimes the most unlikely encounters can restore not only individual lives, but faith in humanity. The homeless veteran who helped a mysterious woman with a broken-down car could never have imagined that the simple act of offering help would change not just his destiny, but would also save his country from a betrayal that could have had devastating consequences for generations.